Howdy, 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 guys. Let me know if you are seeing and hearing this okay. It's been a hot minute since I last did a band nerd hangout. Um, so yeah, um, I thought I might do some updates on what's been going on. Probably the most important one is why has there not been anything for the past couple months? Simple fact is Brett had to take a part-time job, and so yeah, I'm working in an area that's not music. I'm not. It's work. It's a paycheck. Eh, it exists. So so yeah, but let me know if you can hear me, and we'll just kind of have a freeform hangout tonight. Um, a lot of musicians are doing this because of the quarantine issues. Luckily, that has not been affecting us down here too much, though it looks like it's about to really ramp up. Um, I'm in such a rural area that there's not, a lot of quarantining that needs to be done. We already kind of are isolationists. All right, so sounds like everybody is hearing things well. So yeah, I thought we'd just hang out tonight. I'll drink some coffee. I'm sure this will keep me up. Um, One thing I would like to address is just a few minutes before I started the stream, I got word that a friend of mine passed away, who's a fellow composer, and name's Gordon Francis Blaney Jr. He's was really active on Facebook and a lot of the Facebook composition groups, and he evidently passed away a few days ago. He's my age, actually maybe a hair younger than I am, and I'd done quite a bit of work with him. He was one of the contestants, the entries into the Zephyrus um, contest we did last year to have his piece performed. Ultimately, we didn't pick his work, but it really had a lot of merits to it. And I think the reason we didn't pick it is it was going to be too hard for us to put together, which was nothing against the piece of music. It's just didn't have time. And he wrote me a bassoon piece, but yeah, that kind of hit me. I was not really expecting that. So he passed away about 4 days ago, I think. So yeah, I'll get to your questions. Thoughts on orchestrating for guitar orchestras and the inclusion of guitars in the regular orchestra. What benefits, drawbacks would this bring? So, guitar orchestras. Guitar orchestras go back to the days of novelty orchestras. There were all banjo orchestras, all mandolin orchestras, all guitar orchestras, all marimba orchestras, and by and large, these were novelty groups. They would go around the country and they'd perform, you know, hey, what does it sound like if we get 100 guitar players together? It sounds like this. Now, the question is really more about including guitar in the orchestra. And it's been done. It's been done not as frequently as some people would like. But there are pieces that call for it. One of the best examples is Mahler's Seventh Symphony, the fourth movement, the Nocturne number 2. has both a mandolin and a guitar in it, and it's really absolutely lovely. But the orchestra just has to get completely out of the way um, with um, with sound. So guitars are acoustic guitar is not a powerful instrument. Would be interesting to see something like a small guitar section, but I think with the fact that guitars are plucked, having the full section, you're not going to get the same kind of attack you would with strings. So guitar works really well as a solo instrument, and as ensemble instruments, it starts to take away. Uh, Why do you think that instruments like such as the Highland bagpipes don't get into the orchestra, but instruments like the mandolin have? Um, there's a really good reason for that. Highland bagpipes are not tuned to A440. It's really as simple as that. Highland bagpipes are tuned to high pitch, and that high pitch can be anywhere from 452 to 466. So between a quarter and half a step higher, and therefore they're just not going to be able to play in tune with an orchestra. It's really as simple as that. What's my favorite instrument? What qualities does it have that other instruments don't have? I don't play favorites. I have really played favorites. I don't particularly like them. Richard says, you say banjo orchestra as though that's a bad thing. No, not a bad thing. I'm trying to remember. I have a friend who I can't remember if Matt was leading an all banjo orchestra or an all accordion orchestra. And I can't remember. I saw them perform at the state fair, which should tell you something there. But it was a sound. What are your thoughts on the Gagaku Orchestra? I honestly, I have not thought about Japanese traditional instruments really since I took world music as an undergrad, and that's been getting close to 20 years. So I really can't comment on that, Ratchet. It's, they are. If you had the instrument, you would include those kind of instruments with if you were doing a traditionally Japanese piece. Ryan, when will we hear a sketch of your Symphony 5? I haven't written it. I have not done anything on Symphony 5 yet. It is still just nebulous and in my head. I have an alto clarinet sonata I have to get finished first. I was looking around at slide guitar stuff earlier, found a 9-string lap steel guitar that I like more than I expected. Just a nice self-accompanying instrument with separate bass and guitar pickup outputs. I mean, man, we're going off on guitar tangents. I need to get my friend Michael on here. Speaking of guitar, I saw a performance of a Jose Serrano piece with bowed guitar. It's a really cool timbre. Bowed guitar goes back to the arpeggione, which is a bowed guitar. Schubert's famous Arpeggione Sonata, which is most commonly played by cellists, is for a bowed guitar. What are your thoughts on the mandolin orchestras of the late 1800s and do you think mandolin ensemble could work alongside classical strings? I don't see why not. Really, the one composer who was thinking along those terms of having plucked strings along with regular bowed strings was Percy Grainger. And in some of Grainger's works, he will include mandolins, guitars, a section of them alongside the the violins, violas, cellos, and basses. What's your list of orchestra instruments by importance? I don't rank things generally. Every instrument has a purpose and a function. There's uh, there's not really a need to rank them by importance. Does it bother you a hand guitarists refer to baritone guitars as baritones? No. There's no. Unless we're talking about the German baritone. Baritone. Um, the German equivalent of the euphonium, or the old basically bass viola d'amore. There's no instrument called a baritone. Um, so yeah, baritone guitar, baritone ukulele, baritone sax, baritone horn, that kind of stuff. I was looking at the instrumentation of the Nutcracker and I found a rifle. Any ideas what it is besides the weapon? It's the weapon. There is a gunshot in the Nutcracker. So you're saying the Giga Racket has a useful function? I mean, you could make a use for it. Function, I don't know. Do you prefer band or orchestra? Yes. Have I played contrabassoon? Absolutely. I was a professional contrabassoonist for several years. Uh, Percy Grainger being once again the most progressive and innovative composer of our time. Not of our time. Remember, Grainger was doing this 100 years ago. Grainger's real innovation started 1905 is when he was really starting to come up with some of this stuff, and he was doing a lot of stuff in the 1910s. So by the time 1920 comes around, 1920, he doesn't do a lot of composing at this point. Won't pick it up again really until the 1930s. As an alternative to bowed guitar, there is the E-bow, another electronic infinite sustainer. It's pretty nice with a volume pedal. Not a guitar player, but I'm interested in it. Might get a lap steel. Yeah, there's the E-bow, and I know a lot of harp players will also sometimes use an E-bow. What piece is there with a slicing of a watermelon? It's an opera, I know. I think it's about a bunch of nuns, too. About a bunch of nuns? Three saints? Five saints in 3 acts, maybe? Suor Angelica? I don't know. I know Grainger a long dead, but everything he writes still feels fresh. To the point, yes. And interestingly, I've been, since the last Band Nerd Hangout, really getting into one of Grainger's students. And we don't really ever talk about Grainger's students because he didn't really have that many. But turns out, the person whom I consider to be the greatest American orchestrator of the 20th century, one of them anyway, was Grainger's student. And once you put that together with the stuff he does, it's like, oh, everything makes sense now. And that's Bernard Herrmann. Bernard Herrmann, of course, of movie music fame. Psycho, Vertigo. I mean, who's Hitchcock's go-to guy. The Day the Earth Stood Still, Journey to the Center of the Earth. I mean, just absolute masterpieces of orchestration. And a couple of those, and I may do a video on this at some point, but a couple of Herrmann's scores could be played by a band. with no instrumentation changes because he doesn't use strings in a couple of the movies. What common instrument do you think gets the least amount of attention from composers? Contrabassoon. I think that's probably going to be true. Composers just know the least and think it can do the least. As a tuba player, why is it that composers seem to limit the tuba's range? Tuba can easily go as low as a contrabassoon and lower, yet this range is rarely utilized. That's because that range generally does not sound good on the tuba, even with a professional player. It's not flexible. Yes, you can go down that low. Should you? Probably not. Intonation gets really pretty bad down there. Will the great bassoon be a transposing instrument or read in concert pitch? Yes, it is designed to read as both. And we'll talk about great bassoon here in a little bit. So, because we are pitching it in G and not in F, the fundamental scale will be the C major scale. So, therefore, you can use C fingerings and just read off of regular C music and not have to add anything. But you can also write parts in transposing G. What did you major in college? And what courses did you take? My undergrad degree is in music theory and composition. My performance degree is in... my master's degree is in bassoon performance. So, yeah. Oh, we're going too fast. We're going too fast. What are things to keep in mind when writing for one-to-a-part chamber orchestra a la Schoenberg's First Chamber Symphony? Other than keeping the balance of the instruments in mind, of course. I think that's the one thing you have to keep in mind is the balance between the instruments. That in and of itself is orchestration. I would absolutely, if you were writing a piece with one hour apart, study the Schoenberg Chamber Symphony. At least number one. Number two doesn't get performed as often. Also, if you can get your hands on it, look at the John Adams Chamber Symphony. Similar piece, much more modern concepts on it, but fantastic piece. Devilishly difficult. Any tips on scoring for the Great Bassoon? We'll talk Great Bassoon here in a bit, and I can kind of show you where Jared and I have got to. We're going too far. Richard, it does have a point though with 8 VB tenor clef, and there will be a reason for that. I can be around for the stream now since I have no lectures. Yeah, that's kind of why. Someone will film with a film composing channel. I think Alex Ball did analysis and replication of the Vertigo soundtrack with virtual instruments to talk about vintage sound techniques. That may have been Rick Beato's channel. He's done several things with Herman scores. Thoughts of adding an F trigger to a P bone? Why? You don't need it. What are your thoughts on the contrabass flute? Has your opinion on it changed now that they're more available? My opinion on it's never really changed. I have used it a couple times. Once, in a band piece. I'm going to be using it in Symphony 5 once I get around to working on that. That's it's much more available now. It's far more available than things like bass oboe, even some of. It's probably going to be more available even now than basset horn, to be perfectly honest, Jared. A little unrelated to classical music, but what are your views on jazz? I love jazz. I wish I could play it. And I play in a swing orchestra, and I still do not consider myself a jazz player. Uh, yeah, Ratchet says back to what Jack was saying, intonation with the solo strings, but uh, yeah, yeah. I mean, get a good player and you'll be fine. Okay, let's go down. I think I'm nearly caught up now. Uh, do you think any instrument gets too much attention in the orchestra? Yes. The John Adams Chamber Symphony and the Son of Chamber Symphony wants to make me cry. Um, yeah, I mean they're difficult pieces. Contraflutes beat are not unpleasant instruments at all. They're hauntingly beautiful. Um, Now, are we talking contrabass, or are we talking new nomenclature or old nomenclature when we're talking contrabass? So, are we talking the instrument 2 octaves lower than the C flute or 3 octaves lower? That's where it gets confusing. What's to say it's not melodic? It can be melodic. Absolutely, yeah. When will I buy an oboe? Are they expensive? Oboes are always expensive. Oboes are an instrument I am never going to go the cheap route on. You've got to have, if you're going to play oboe, you need to have a decent one, and you're talking several $1,000s. I simply just do not have that kind of money. Beat T series. I don't think you understand my channel. Why don't you listen for a while? Which instrument gets too much attention in the orchestra? One of them. Contraflutes are percussion because their proper sound is so quiet. Why not utilize the key clacking? Uh, well, yeah, because a lot of with the contraflute, those larger flutes, you will hear a lot of key noise, but a lot of that is because the music being written for those instruments, um, it is much more modern in nature and will utilize those techniques more. Oh, which one? One section? Oh, well, Yeah, Jared, I don't need that your weird oboe. I mean, if I'd love it, but I don't need it. Do I play any string instruments? Nope. Percussive contra, flute plus mic'd electric bass could be a nice pairing. Yeah, oh yeah. What wind instrument do you think is the best all-around starter instrument? And do you think there is a point in giving kids a bridge instrument instead of giving a clarinet or something? I still like the idea of starting kids on the recorder. Um, but and then have them go to something else because recorder is simple enough. It gets such a bad rap. Violin, oboe, yes, those are instruments, but it's not a percussive instrument. Well, yes and no, because the effects being produced are percussive. How do you usually utilize the alto clarinet in my music? Now there's a question. Alto clarinet in my music is really kind of like my secret ingredient. Um, in as far as I can do stuff with the alto clarinet to really bridge the gaps. It's almost always going to be an inner voice Um, it's it's almost too difficult to say how I'm using it in a single video. Maybe at some point I'll do an entire video on how I use the alto clarinet as my secret weapon, and that actually may be a good video topic. Why don't you start all kids on alto or tenor recorder? Tenor recorder is too difficult. Alto recorder is in F. You'd really want to keep the kids learning in C. The only woodwind instrument that fundamentally fingers in F is bassoon. So many fundamental concepts of woodwinds could be very effectively taught on recorder. Exactly. Yeah. So recorder has so many fundamentals you could do on it. What instrument do you think more people should learn to play? Bassoon. Yeah, there are a lot of new simple instruments for kids with reeds, plastic saxonet recorder things. Yeah, there have been for a long time. There used to be lots of that stuff in the 20s, 30s, 40s. The only issue with the recorder is that it doesn't usually have a good sound. I beg to differ. That is my cheap, simple soprano recorder, the exact model that you will see in classrooms. It can be played absolutely beautifully. Perhaps not by me, though. The Vinova, start the kids on Vinovas. If you were theoretically to write for bassoon, saxophones, sarrusophones, ophicleides, and euphoniums, how would you go about it? Very carefully. Of those, I've actually never written for ophicleide before. The clarinet, but clarinet is a nice starter woodwind. Yeah, clarinet is perfectly fine as a beginner woodwind. I have no problem with starting people on that. I personally started woodwinds on bassoon. I did not play recorder at all before I touched a bassoon. Yamaha makes a Minova, but take it from someone who plays the saxophone, it sounds horrible. It's not meant to sound like a saxophone, though. It's meant to be a teaching instrument. Is it true that you favored the basset horn over the alto clarinet at one point? Yes. There was a time when I advocated using the basset horn over the alto clarinet. I simply, I think I was wrong. And there's a few reasons why I say I was wrong. They are different instruments. They do have different functions. Also, you've got the fact that basset horns are just so incredibly rare. I've said it before, but in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there are 10 basset horns, 5 pairs of them. That's it. Whereas alto clarinets, you can find them all over the place. Cheap plastic toy recorders are a bad representation of recorders. You know, not all of them. There are some good ones. That one I've got is perfectly fine. Do I have a favorite Vaughan Williams piece? Yes. I absolutely love Symphony 7 and Symphony 9. Those are by far my two favorites. That's not why recorder is taught, though. In my experience, it was just a thing that people in elementary school were forced to have the music class, and recorders are cheap and easy. The no, the real reason recorders were taught is that it served as a bridge to be able to progress on to woodwind instruments, other woodwinds, and that was always the thinking and the philosophy behind that. If you could get your players starting on the recorder, then you could easily progress them to clarinet and flute and oboe and saxophone. I really want to learn bassoon, but I can't afford a half decent used plastic instrument. Yeah, they're expensive. Sorry. You. Yeah, Jared, your idea of a simple taragato might work. What's my opinion on synthetic reeds? Love them. I love the Leger reeds. Lately I have been using some cane reeds because I've lost all my B-flat clarinet Legers. I don't know where they are. I moved straight from recorder to tuba. Good for you. It's kind of weird that they market the Vinova as a casual, then pack hard reed in the box like a 3 or 3.5, if I remember correctly. So you get another reed. The reeds will wear out. This year's by the time you have to deal with with reeds and chromatic keys, it's really easy to gloss over some woodwind fundamentals like airstream consistently and smooth finger motion. Exactly. That's a huge point there. It's not there to teach you to... You're not there to play a jam session on a Vinova. You're there to learn the fundamentals of how to blow, how to finger, how to tongue, how to use your airstream. So don't think of them as teaching instruments and not performance instruments. That I'd agree is dumb. I'd have chosen at most a 1.5, which is what I learned B-flat clarinet on. Okay. I use Legers for very large instruments as a screw around on a whim reed for higher pitched instruments. In my opinion, kids should be taught on instruments that sound good. Don't give a kid a cheap toy instrument if you really want them to be interested. Okay. And the 11th basset horn of the DFW area is now in my collection. Did you get another basset horn, Jared? Yes, Richard is absolutely correct. Recorder could be taught better in schools. And I think part of that is the elementary music teachers generally are not instrumentalists. They're almost always people from a choral background. And because of that, they don't have the proper training to really teach those kids forward on how to play the recorder in a way that they need to. I think I agree with that. Children like to be taken seriously. Yes. Yeah, there is some of that. I think part of it, though, is that the recorder has just kind of been treated badly. School didn't have any education for any instruments. We only had singing in my elementary school. Same with mine. I didn't have it. We didn't play recorders at all until we got to 6th grade and we had band. Why did I discontinue the saxophone in the orchestra series? I'm not sure. I don't remember. Depression, basically. If you want to know the truth, the Tenorune seems like a good option. I know someone who is actually using tenor rooms to teach children, and he's having amazingly successful results. He's actually pursuing his doctorate, and that's his area of study. Exactly. Again, Richard has a point. A room full of kids playing recorder may be a poor sound, but it's a lot better than a room full of kids playing oboes, clarinets, and saxophone. Yes. Jared, too, if you're getting confused, it's only your fault. You're one of the Jareds. That's an identity crisis. Also, the music program I grew up with expanded beginning band stuff back to fifth grade, 15 or so years ago, and I've seen kids who benefited. Yes, again, that. So one of the school districts I used to work for, Arlington ISD here in Texas, they started their string players in fifth grade, but the band players didn't start until sixth grade. So what ended up happening is the string program, the orchestra, got all the really interested and really eager players, and the other players, well, they were the leftovers, and so the string programs were always successful. The band programs never were successful. People that are new to the instrument won't even think to buy new reeds for the Vinova. They'll open the box and play, and they go, "Oh, I can't play this. I guess when an instrument start for me." Maybe, but if that's why you get a teacher. Okay. Why don't orchestras use saxophone more often? Okay, that's actually it's a long, complicated answer that can be boiled down to the word politics. Um, the saxophone was basically shunned and shunned until the point where they got to the musician unions and they were able to write long-term contracts and say that these are the instruments we're going to use, and the saxophone wasn't included. So, yeah, saxophone absolutely could be used in the orchestra, but basically because we deal now with the musicians unions who have guidelines for hiring and firing and all that kind of stuff and what instruments should be in the orchestra, that's kind of where we stand. Okay. All right. Kids playing out of tune saxophone, saxes and trumpets is a terrible sound, but it must be allowed and encouraged. Same with anything for beginners. Get them to play the music and work on the intonation later. Okay. Uh, okay. That's how many of these? It's not an issue of kids in general. It's kids that don't care about it. The kids that do enjoy playing it and will sound at least semi-competent. Uh, what's your opinion of the nouveau instruments? Talking about music education. I don't know anything about them really. Uh, how well can tenor room prepare you for any instrument other than bassoon? That's my only reservation. Oh no, it doesn't. It prepares you for bassoon. That's what it's there for. The little octave bassoons do that as well. If I compose anything for orchestra, lots. I used to compose mostly for orchestra. Um, Last piece I did with orchestra was my double saxophone concerto for soprano and tenor sax and string orchestra. Ratchet, you're a sweetheart. Thank you. Bringing it away from children's education. Have you heard of the bodhrán? Italian Irish drum. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know about it. I mean, if you're going to use it, you use it for Irish music. You don't. It's not something you're going to bring into the regular orchestra or regular band. Yeah, the basics of music will cross over from different fingering mechanisms and instrument families, but the bassoon is family is kind of the most distant woodwind as I understand. Yes, but if you're going to deal with the very smallest bassoons, they're actually using pretty much recorder fingerings. So okay, I think I am all caught up. Um, when will you buy an alto flute? When you gonna give me some money to buy one? Um, I would love an alto flute. Surprisingly, my flute chops are getting better. I had a flute gig on Sunday, which reminds me, I need to ask about getting paid for that. But uh, it, it's just I will one day I will get an alto flute at some point. I'm not sure um, when though. Money has been so tight for the last couple years that um, I have not gotten many new instruments at all, and the ones I have gotten have all been barters. Okay, as a composer, how do you retain your ideas until you can orchestrate them on sheet music, especially for groups like orchestras and large concert bands? Okay, so this is an interesting question. When I compose for a large ensemble, I am both composing and orchestrating at the same time. So um, oh, okay. I'm gonna go back up. So I am always thinking about what the instrument is, what's playing, what function it's serving. So the orchestration and the composing are not separate entities for me. They are one and the same, and I can't separate one from another. Have I been 3D printing anything lately? Yes. How do you harmonize some of those melodies? Okay, so therein is a fascinating question. How do I harmonize the melody? Typically, I don't. I write the harmony first and then write a melody on top of it. That's it's more or less how I tend to operate. The melody, and then once I've got that melody over the harmony, I can take that and then I can transform it. And that would be an interesting video topic as well. Um, yes, Ratchet. Irish is not. After you complete the Great Bassoon Project, when is the 3D printed Saxophones coming? I honestly, I don't think 3D printing a Saxophone is probably the way to go. That really should be done in metal. Did you ever? Do you ever plan on getting your Symphony 3 performed? How did the premiere of Symphony 2 go? Symphony 2 has not been premiered. I know you've asked about that before. Um, so Symphony 2 one day will get premiered, I'm sure. Symphony 3 is going to need an act of God to get played. Symphony 4, though, is getting premiered this December. So Symphony 4 is good. What is my favorite piece that I've composed? Symphony 3 is the most personal. I probably have the most personally invested in Symphony 3. And I'd have to say I think is probably my best piece as well. Uh, I think it's really the first piece that I've written that truly feels like me. So there's that. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to grab something I've got behind me and show this off a little bit. I don't think Jared has even seen this because I haven't shown him the pictures of it yet. But what I've got right here is two and a half joints of the great bassoon. So got this is the wing joint here. It's actually in two pieces. Upper wing joint and the lower wing joint. The lower wing joint has got all the tone holes. The upper wing joint, when fully finished, will have the vent holes. This is the bottom half of the top half, I should say, of the boot joint. This is only half of the length, so it's going to be out to here. There's going to be a little bit more done to it. We realize that we're going to put an insert in here because this was modeled a hair too big. Eventually, I'd like to lessen this distance right here. This is 8 millimeters. I'd love it to be 5 to match up. Otherwise, this is the top half of the boot joint. So you can start to see parts of the great bassoon coming together. On this particular model, we're going to have two open tone holes. So one here for first finger of the left hand and one here for first finger of the right hand. So it'd be held like this. Now that I've got this here, you can see kind of where it's going to rest. There are, of course, going to be some concerns with when the bass joint gets put in. It's going to be pretty thick at this point, and one of my concerns is how the hand is going to go in, because it very easily could get to have an ergonomic problem where the hand actually won't fit. And so if that's the case, the key work may have to get built out a little more. And so instead of having it pretty close, the keys may have to be a little further out. So we'll kind of see how that goes. What it's looking like right now, if I'm totally honest, is any thumb keys on the wing joint would have to really come out to about here. The boot joint, I'll need to print the second half, and I'll probably start that here in a few days. I'm out of filament right now, and I'll need to order some soon. And then Jared and I, hopefully in the next couple days, will start modeling the bass joint. With the bass joint, I think we've decided that we're going to make it the same height as the wing, and then the bell is going to be the remainder. So, all said and done, from ground up, this will be to the top of the bell, the top of the bass joint here, and then it's another 3 feet up. The bell will be 3 feet tall. And it's possible we'll put actually that as 2 joints as well. Like we split the wing into 2 joints. But that's where the great bassoon is sitting right now. The bottom half of the boot joint is modeled. It's ready to go on the printer. I'm just out of printer filament. Okay. How many pieces have I composed? Wasn't Jared playing a little of it? Yeah, Jared... no, Jared was not playing with the boot joint because he hasn't printed the boot joint yet. How many pieces have I composed? 50 maybe? I'm not sure. I've never really counted them. Where did I get my trombone from? eBay. What brand is it? Bisher. Simple as that. Um, it's mostly decoration, honestly. It doesn't play well. The plating on the inner slide has come off. Like I said, it's decoration. All right. What else do we have, guys? What other questions we got tonight? Anybody have any questions on the great? What was the inspiration for Symphony 2? Um, Honestly, Symphony 2, I started out as a different piece. Originally, it was just going to be a piece called The Forest of Dreams. It wasn't going to be a full symphony, it was just going to be a tone poem. And I just kind of wanted to do a nocturnal forest scene because, um, well, that's just kind of what I draw inspiration from natural environments. But I I'm not fully sure where it came from. I mean, there within the Forest of Dreams there are six different dreams, six episodes, and each one, if you take them in chronological order, is basically telling the story of a person's life from birth to death. And so you can go through what's called innocence, and then there's the scene of nature, which is kind of a scene of discovery. There's flight, which is, to me, representative of creating an artistic and building things. And there's the scene of love. Then there's the scene of war, and then there's the scene of death. What music am I listening to at the moment? Oh, what did I listen to the other day? I can't even remember. Not a lot. I probably missed this be mentioned before, but how large will the great bassoon reed be? Probably not too much larger than a regular bassoon reed, to be perfectly honest. It between a bassoon reed and maybe a little bit closer to a Baroque bassoon reed. So yeah. What composing projects do I have in the works? I'm working on an alto clarinet sonata right now, and I should have been done by now, but with my new job, I just simply have not had the time. If your definition of a tuba is true, does that mean that my favorite anime should be called sound tenor tuba? I mean, the euphonium is a type of tenor tuba, so it's within the Venn diagram of it. It's fine. You can call it euphonium. Symphony 2 sounds kind of like taking Symphony Fantastique to a new level. I mean, I have always had a deep affinity for Symphony Fantastique and all of Berlioz's works, actually. But that said, the more you study music, the more psychological pieces you find, like Symphony Fantastique. In a perfect, ideal world, what would your bassoon choir instrumentation be? So, whenever somebody asks what my perfect instrumentation for X would be, I always have to reply, what's the music being performed? You can't separate instrumentation from the music. The music has to come first. If a bassoon ensemble can be done by two bassoons, do it with two bassoons. If it can be done by three, do it with three. If the music requires an expanded section, use an expanded section. Can you make cheap euphonium mutes with cones and cardboard? Yes, you can. All right. How do you feel about the fact that the world of musical instruments is imperfect? Well, nothing's perfect. Honestly, I mean, I don't want perfect. I don't know why anybody would want perfect. We played a piece that asked for consort euphonium, and we're going to do that, but we never got around to doing it. Yeah, I mean, it's entirely. How do they sound like? Yeah, it's just a mute. It's not a. Euphonium mutes have been around. Richard Strauss was the first to call for it in Don Quixote, and Don Quixote is the first piece to ever use a euphonium in the orchestra. So, what is the least used clarinet? Bass clarinet in A. Considering that there are only 6 modern instruments, I would say those are the least used, followed probably by the D clarinet. A flat would probably be third. Besides the obvious added weight, do you think the idea for a low B flat standard F double horn for stronger register? I think it would be a great idea. Yeah, I have no problem with it. Is probably the clarinet in high G half step below the A flat. Possibly, though. It's not. It's going to be more used than the bass clarinet in A. The high G clarinet is still used in Austrian Schrammel music. So you'll see it there occasionally. High F is pretty much extinct. I don't think anybody has made a high F clarinet in over 100 years. D clarinet, yes. A bass in A, yes. Which extremely rare clarinet do you want to resurrect? High F, yeah. I'd like to see a high F clarinet. Jared and I have talked about that before. 3D printing a high F clarinet body, then getting a cheap Chinese E flat, cutting down all the keys. Yeah, Jared has pointed me to the one on eBay a few times. We think it's an F. We're not 100% sure though. It's marked as an E flat, but Jared says it's considerably smaller. Buffet does do a D clarinet, and the only other person who does a D clarinet in the Burm system now is Steve Fox. Get a bunch of clarinets in different keys and have them play the same melody in their respective keys. Yeah, I mean, I've done that before. Jared, I'm not touching that one. What's my favorite clarinet? Alto. I have an affinity for the alto, always have. Though I really am liking the contra alto, the great bass clarinet. It's my great bass is sitting a few feet over there on the floor. Took it to my swing band gig a few weeks ago. To try and read off the Barry sax part. It didn't work so well. Should I score for the oboe d'amore or bass oboe? Depends on what piece you're doing, who's performing it, what the players have. I mean, you can always score for them. Whether or not they'll be played, well, that's a different matter. Steve Fox also has a bass in A. He hasn't completed any A basses yet. Last I talked to Steve, he had orders for 3, which is highly surprising. So, So yeah, he will birth unto the world three bass clarinets in A this year at some point. That's what she said. Yes, to me the alto and bass clarinets have the nicest sound. Yeah, I think the alto is kind of like the best blend between the highs and the lows. But again, I'm weird. All right, guys, I've been going right at an hour. Um, what else do we got? Do you think it could be reliably and economically manufactured? That octo contra clarinets could be in use in a musical setting. Um, yes, I think you could get an octo contra clarinet into a musical setting. What is my favorite instrument to play? Bassoon. It's the one I play the best. We need to see more bass oboe. 100% agree. It would be easy to make. Just use the keys from a normal bass. Don't even modify them much. Yeah, exactly. Any extinct instrument families you'd like to see revived? Saxophones. It's always been the saxophones. Jared, you always need more projects. Um, one of these days, I'm going to have to sit down and really learn to do really good CAD modeling. I No, there's no need for a 64-foot anything, to be perfectly honest. For me, I'd love to see the saxophone and the ophicleides make a comeback, blend the brass and the woodwinds. Ophicleides are making a comeback. They really are. Saxophones, well, why are some tubas bigger than others if they have the same fundamental? Bore width and masculinity there. The bigger tuba you have, the more manly you are. Exactly, Richard. Yeah, you don't need a 64-foot anything. 64-foot organ stops really aren't even that useful. I mean, they're useful for demolishing the building they're in, but I mean, you're dealing with, what is that? 8 hertz? What instrument family does the saxophone belong to? The saxophone family. I mean, there's like 9 different sizes of saxophone. Yeah, octo contra clarinets are 32 foot. Yeah, and I think between what Jared's doing and what Richard's doing, I think we're going to, within the next year or so, really have a good, better understanding of how the 32-foot register of woodwind instruments will behave. And that's going to be kind of exciting. What is my favorite piece I've played on the bassoon? Solo or orchestral or band? I'm not sure. Yeah, 128-foot organ stops don't exist. Tips for scoring for the heckelphone. Go read Richard Strauss scores. Just go grab the Alpine Symphony and start reading it. Do you think an alto member of the tuba family should be developed? Maybe it's just because... oh, God, yes. I absolutely want a true alto tuba. At some point, I'm going to talk to some instrument manufacturers and see what they say. I have a friend who is a tuba builder who could make one pretty easily. So we'll see. I would love yeah. Mellophone just is too much of a hybrid instrument. So Yeah. Essentially, what I would like to see is a four valve compensating instrument in either E flat or F, um, and with a big wide euphonium like bore. Alto horn is a cornet. Yes, that's correct. It's a cornet. Ask Wessex. Well, yeah, they're on the list to ask. Horns in the brass band. Those are alto horns. The baritone horns and the euphonium serve different functions. Absolutely. Baritone horns are cornets. Euphoniums are tubas. No, euphonium is not a subset of baritone. They are from two different families. How similar is the bass sax horn to the tuba? The baritone is close to the euphonium, but is there a bass? Okay, sax horns. Sax horns, awfully confusing. First off, get rid of the term sax horn from your vocabulary. Modern instruments just don't need to be classified as sax horns. Unless you're talking about the French C tuba, which can be called a sax horn. But it's still a tuba. Any true sax horn is a member of the tuba family. Whether it's a soprano sax horn or a bass sax horn or a contrabass sax horn, they're all tuba instruments. The alto horn and the baritone horn, however, are not sax horns. They are saxotrombas. They got rebranded as sax horns. And they are members of the cornet family. Wessex, honestly, I think that BAC here in the U.S. could also do it as well. They've got all the tooling to do it. Xander, you go right ahead and orchestrate for Garkline, Crumhorn, and Giga Racket. Didn't you say the baritone horn was a subset of euphonium? No. Tenor tuba, yes. Yeah, so Sweeter is right. There are hybrids, particularly with American instruments. But even those American instruments are pretty much euphoniums. That's the thing about brass instruments is that you can start blending the lines between families, where you can't really blend the lines between families in woodwinds. A true bass cornet and a contrabass cornet too. Yes, you can do that. At some point, you have to start wondering what kind of function are they going to serve. Will that function be any different than the function of a tuba? Can I play the Rite of Spring? I don't know. Let's see if I can or not. No seat strap. Okay, so I'm going to try and play this no seat strap, cold, in a dead Leger reed. Something like that. Rhythm's not perfect, and one of the notes didn't want to speak very well, but I can play it. Yes, baritone euphonium instruments are confusing. Small bore, yeah, exactly. Yeah, small bore euphoniums that get called baritones. It'll sound different if played on the original French bassoon. Um, is it? You know, there's a rumor that Stravinsky at some point heard it being performed so easily, he said, I should have written it a third higher. Um, Something like that. And some people say a fifth higher. So, but Ratchet, your baritone horn was a euphonium. Have I heard of the travel tuba? Yes, I have. The British baritone. Yes, though British baritone is an American term. Its true name should be just baritone horn. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. Do we have any more questions? I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up for the night. Uh, You see, the thing is, I've heard it on Contra before. When the Fox Fast system did I say that the travel tuba was a bass cornet? Yes, I did. It essentially is because it has that very narrow bore profile. Does anybody else feel the sax family is criminally underused in modern concert band music? No, I don't. I think more and more composers are using the saxophones more and more. What I think is underrated in modern band music are the double reeds. Composers forgetting that those instruments are there or treating them as optional or negligible. Forward-facing bell, that's going to be it's still going to be what we call an American style euphonium. Somebody played it at pitch on a contraforte, and yeah, and somebody playing the right an octave up on the bassoon. Yeah, that you can do it easily on the contraforte. That's no problem. I played up there on a contraforte, no big deal. I know Christian Ronas has done it up the octave on bassoon. I edited his book on how to play in the extreme high register. The doubling of the horn is a horrible practice. Yes. Unfortunately, saxophones will get used to the fullest potential for blending instruments to the general like a double reed. Yes, that's true for like beginner and middle grade band music. But once you get up to the real stuff, it's fine. Then again, I don't think people know what the marketing. Yeah. So if it was made in America, you have a 99.9% chance that it is a euphonium and not a baritone. A Con 1920s, maybe, but I still think it's probably a baritone. So, Kahn called them baritones, and you are correct that they called them that. At that time, baritone was the name for euphonium, and they used the term tenor horn for what we now call baritone horns. So if you go back and look at older band music, you will see tenors and baritones. You won't see euphonium. You see tenors and baritones. So the term baritone meant euphonium, which is why it's just confusing as hell. Do I listen to opera? Not much. The singing gets in the way. What are my favorite opera scores? Give me any Wagner or Strauss. So yeah, give me a good Electra any day for a score. The tenor horn is in E flat. I've never heard Con marketing that particular instrument as a tenor. I've always heard them marketing it as an alto. I'd need to go back and look at old Con catalogs. Horn plus fives plus sax, consort plus bassoon is great. Yeah. Just the Americans did that. The British never did. It was just the Americans. And Americans just kind of wanted to market things. The only thing Con really ever called a euphonium back then was a double-belled euphonium. Sans, yeah. You're right. Saxophone consort only if you want the bell tones to be muted. That said, you really hardly ever use the lowest couple semitones on a saxophone, so it's fine. Yes, the 1920s was an era of major marketing. Well, let's just kind of look at that, because I've got a sax here, and I wonder where my soprano saxophone mute is. So let me go grab that real quick. Okay, so I've got a soprano saxophone here, and I've got a soprano saxophone mute. With the mute in. So yes, it does dampen the overall output some. It may not pick up that well on the microphone. So that's what happens if I try and play a low B flat. That's a low B, not coming out. That's C. So that's the first note I can actually play with the mute in. So it really does dampen the sound quite a bit. Okay. I think it depends on the ensemble, but I personally like a section of 1 E flat, 4 B flat, 2 G, 2 alto, 2 bass, clarinet, and 1 each of the contra clarinets. I like that ensemble. That would work, yeah. Instrument sounds flat by a third time. It could just be the player. I wonder if now is a good time to take my instrument to a repair shop with all the New Jersey Corona stuff. I bet that your repair techs will be pretty busy, to be perfectly honest. Though, I'd contact them and find out. Rather score for G clarinet or basset horn. Depends on the function. I've scored for both before. Um, uh, I think somebody needs to do a low double horn at some point, Sweeter. I think that would be something that really should be explored. And quite frankly, there are pieces in the literature that call for that instrument. Um, like Bruckner's Symphonies 8 and 9 both have parts for bass horn and B flat, for a valve bass horn. Uh, like alto, flute, English horn, bass clarinet, low horn, and contrabass. Yeah, it'd be fine. Uh, yes, Jared answered it. It's Emily. Yeah, it's PLA, and it's PLA. The P. Yeah, so it's all plant based. That said, ABS is perfectly safe too, as long as it's in a ventilated area. ABS needs to be printed basically in your garage when you're not there. A lower horn. Yeah, the tuba are different instruments, really. Emily was asking, so this is one of Jared's designed clarinet bulbous bells that this one does not fit my clarinets very well. But yeah, this is just PLA. It's it's just a plant-based derivative. So this one happens to be white. It had been the one I had. But I've talked to Jared about it a little bit. This would need to be a little bit. He's designed these for buffet clarinets, and mine are my B flat's a Selmer, and Selmers and buffets have different bores. So. What's your proposed name for Wagner tuba? I call them Wagner tubas. There's not really a better name. Tuba versus tuben, that's plural. So tuben is plural. Simple as that. There are some people that vehemently say that it's tube, Tube. I do not know where that comes from. It's tuba. It's Wagner. Now the real sticking point is they don't really get called Wagner tubas until sometime in the 20th century. Wagner never called them that. Bruckner never called them that. Strauss never did. Stravinsky didn't. Schoenberg didn't. So when they get starting to be called a Wagner tuba is a little bit different. Yeah. Tube is the plural in French. And the only French score I know that really calls for him, well, there's two. There's Rite of Spring, and then there's the Firebird, and you don't see him anywhere else. Yet there are some horn scholars that say it should be TUBE, and fairly well known scholars too. So those are just they're marked as tenor and bass tuba. Though Strauss just called them all tenor tubas. In Hollywood scores, they're almost always called tubin or tubin horns, which is odd. I also think they're kind of in an inevitability with or without Wagner. I don't think so, because you've got the situation basically. Wagner really wanted sax horns. He wanted Adolph Sax's instruments. But he didn't like sax. They were too with each other, and they just didn't get along, and so he had Moritz make him the new instruments, and just made him with a horn mouthpiece, basically. Emily, you need to find a new place. I know you've complained about that so much. That's not good for you or your mental health. There's a better way to separate their name from the tuba family. They didn't rely on using Wagner's name in that way. There just hasn't been a good name. Tuba horn compromise. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, maybe you resurrect the name Buccina for that's kind of the idea he was going for. Old ancient horns, like the lure, but he was. Perhaps. There really hasn't been another composer, though, who has forced instruments into existence. I've heard them called Bayreuth tubas before, but I think that would be even still confusing. So there's never been a perfectly good name for them, but I think Wagner tuba has stuck for better or worse. All right, guys, I am going to go ahead and sign off now. It's been an hour and a half. I know that my camera battery is probably not going to last too much longer. What's my next 3D printing instrument after the Great Bassoon? It's probably going to be another Great Bassoon. So once we get this one finished, we'll kind of do some play testing on it, and I'm sure that it's going to need more. Everything will probably need to get reprinted at some point. So anyway, guys, it's been fun. I may do another one at some point soon. I don't ever get sick. I haven't been actually sick in over 20 years. Probably closer to 30 years by now. So yes, join the Discord. We nerd out all the time. You get access through Patreon. So, all right, guys. I will talk to you all later.